Did you know that over 1.5 million homes in the US are now listed on Airbnb? That's a staggering number, and it's just the tip of the iceberg. Many people think Airbnb is all about giving travelers unique stays and helping locals earn extra money. But there's a darker side to this booming industry that's rarely discussed. In cities like San Francisco, rental prices have shot up by nearly 40% since the rise of short-term rentals. Imagine being priced out of your own neighborhood because investors are snapping up homes to rent them out to tourists. This isn't just happening in big cities, either. Small towns are facing similar challenges, with entire communities losing their character as they become playgrounds for visitors. In this video, we will uncover how Airbnb is changing local communities and not in a good way. From the disappearance of affordable housing to the fading of local culture, we'll explore the real impact of short-term rentals. So, stick around as we dive into the statistics and stories that reveal the hidden costs of this popular travel trend. You won't want to miss it. Chapter 1. The Airbnb Mirage. Glittering Promises, Hidden Consequences. Airbnb started with the promise of offering travelers a local, home-like experience. At first glance, it seemed like a win-win. Hosts could earn extra income, and travelers got a cheaper, more authentic stay than traditional hotels. But there's a growing conversation about the impact on local communities, and it's not all positive. In fact, a 2019 study found that in major cities like Barcelona and San Francisco, the rise of Airbnb properties led to noticeable increases in rental prices. People often talk about Airbnb as a way to democratize travel, but who's really benefiting? In some cities, up to 40% of Airbnb listings are controlled by commercial operators. This means wealthy investors are buying up homes to list as short-term rentals, cutting the supply of housing for locals. What once felt like a community-driven idea has now morphed into a corporate scheme, and many locals are paying the price. One major issue is that Airbnbs have become a threat to housing affordability. In some parts of New York City, for instance, rents have gone up by as much as 7% because of Airbnb's influence on the housing market. In smaller towns, the effect is even worse. It's not just about money either. The sense of community is eroding. Locals are now questioning whether the promise of living like a local is worth the disruption. As more properties get turned into short-term rentals, neighborhoods are changing, and not for the better. A longtime resident of Venice Beach, California, put it simply, "My neighbors left, and now I see new faces every weekend. It doesn't feel like home anymore." These are not isolated concerns. Communities from Amsterdam to Austin are seeing similar shifts. Chapter 2. From Neighbors to Strangers. The vanishing local vibe. There's something magical about a close-knit neighborhood. People know each other's names, kids play on the streets, and there's a shared sense of belonging. But with the rise of Airbnbs, that magic is starting to fade. When properties are rented out to short-term visitors, the neighborly vibe disappears. Instead of seeing familiar faces, locals are met with a revolving door of strangers. This rapid turnover has turned once thriving communities into something unrecognizable. Take Edinburgh, for example. A study by Inside Airbnb revealed that over 10,000 properties in the city are listed on the platform, making up a significant portion of the city's housing stock. Many locals have been pushed out of the historic center, where they can no longer afford to live. What used to be a city filled with character is now catering to tourists rather than residents. It's not just about housing. Local shops, cafes, and businesses that relied on a steady stream of locals are now struggling to keep up. When the local crowd moves away, or worse, when neighborhoods turn into tourist zones, businesses catering to long-term residents often go under. Imagine owning a coffee shop that used to see the same faces every morning. Now, it's filled with tourists who may never come back. The community isn't the same. The psychological toll is real too. Social cohesion, the glue that holds neighborhoods together, weakens when people don't have a permanent connection to the place they live. Instead of nurturing relationships with neighbors, people come and go, leaving locals feeling isolated. Research shows that social ties play a critical role in personal well-being, and when that bond is broken, people can feel disconnected and lonely. It's like living in a hotel, but without the room service. If you're finding this information eye-opening, don't forget to subscribe. We'll explore more about how Airbnb affects communities in the chapters ahead. Chapter 3. Ghost Towns. The disappearance of affordable housing. One of the most alarming effects of Airbnb's rise is the way it's reshaping the housing market. Investors see dollar signs, and locals see their communities slipping away. In many cities, entire buildings are now dedicated solely to Airbnb guests, leaving fewer options for people looking for long-term rentals. This leads to what some call ghost towns, areas where real locals are hard to find and tourists dominate. In New Orleans, a city known for its vibrant culture, the problem has gotten so bad that some neighborhoods have seen a drop in permanent residents by over 20%. These aren't just numbers, they represent families who can no longer afford to live in their own city. Instead, they're being replaced by short-term visitors looking for a weekend getaway. It's heartbreaking for those who have called these neighborhoods home for generations. The data paints a clear picture. A study from McGill University found that in Los Angeles, over 7,000 entire homes were listed as short-term rentals, further tightening the already scarce rental market. This shift doesn't just hurt renters. It also creates challenges for the local economy. When there's no stable community, there's no reliable customer base for businesses. The long-term residents who would normally support the local economy are being priced out. In places like Lisbon, the rise of Airbnb has forced local governments to step in. Strict regulations have been put in place to limit short-term rentals in an effort to keep housing affordable. But for many cities, these policies come too late. The damage is already done. Local communities have been hollowed out, and it's unclear if they can ever fully recover. So, while Airbnb might offer travelers a charming place to stay, the communities left behind are paying a steep price. In many cases, they are losing their sense of identity, their affordable housing, and their unique character. The question remains, is it worth it? For many locals, the answer is a resounding no. Chapter 4. Tourist dollars versus local livelihoods. A shifting economy. Tourism can inject money into local economies, but not all dollars are created equal. When Airbnbs flood neighborhoods, the benefits aren't evenly spread. Sure, tourists spend money, but where that money goes can be surprising. In many cases, it's the out-of-town property owners who profit the most. According to a study by the Economic Policy Institute, more than 40% of Airbnb hosts have multiple properties. This means profits are often funneled to investors who don't live in the community, rather than local homeowners. This is a big shift from traditional tourism. In the past, tourists would stay in locally owned hotels or guest houses. Their spending would directly support small businesses, creating jobs for locals. But with Airbnb, the landscape has changed. Many small hotels and bed and breakfasts are struggling to compete with hosts who don't have the same overhead costs. As a result, local businesses that rely on steady tourism are being squeezed out. The local economy that Airbnb promotes is often more of a myth than a reality. Tourists might stop at the big-name coffee chain or grab a quick meal at a fast food spot, but they're not necessarily supporting the local mom and pop shops that have long been the backbone of communities. A study of Airbnb's impact in Barcelona found that the platform contributed to a 12% increase in local rental prices, but local businesses didn't see a corresponding boost in revenue. Another problem is that locals are increasingly priced out of their own neighborhoods. The rise of short-term rentals often inflates property values, making it harder for families to stay in the area. When locals leave, they take their spending power with them. It's a vicious cycle. Fewer locals means fewer customers for the businesses that serve them. Meanwhile, those who benefit most from the Airbnb economy may never set foot in the community. Chapter 5. Culture Clash. When local traditions collide with global tourism, Airbnb prides itself on offering travelers the chance to live like a local. But what happens when global tourism clashes with the local way of life? In many communities, the influx of visitors has started to dilute the cultural fabric that makes these places special. Local traditions are often replaced with tourist-friendly experiences that cater to short-term visitors instead of preserving the authentic culture. Take Venice, for example. The city has long been a top tourist destination, but the rise of Airbnb has accelerated the cultural shift. Once residential areas are now packed with vacation rentals, pushing out longtime Venetians. As a result, traditional festivals and customs are being overshadowed by events aimed at attracting tourists. Locals have begun to feel like outsiders in their own city. A Venetian resident explained it best: "It feels like we're living in a theme park built for tourists." This erosion of local culture isn't unique to Venice. In cities around the world, Airbnb is contributing to what some call the Disneyfication of communities. Local charm is replaced by tourist-friendly versions of culture that may look authentic on the surface but are often disconnected from reality. In Paris, for instance, certain neighborhoods once known for their artistic communities are now filled with short-term rentals, pushing out the very artists who made the areas desirable in the first place. It's not just urban areas feeling the strain. In rural towns, Airbnb's growth has led to similar tensions. In places where local traditions have been passed down for generations, short-term rentals are disrupting the rhythm of daily life. Local markets are replaced by tourist shops, and once quiet neighborhoods are now hotspots for visitors. While tourism has always been a part of these areas, the shift to short-term rentals means that locals have less say in how their culture is represented. If you found these insights helpful, don't forget to subscribe. Join us as we continue to explore the complex world of travel and its effects on local communities.